Ever wondered why some lightsaber attacks in Battlefront 2 seem to defy physics, sending players flying across the map? Today I'll be completely breaking down the lunge, a mechanic far more complex than you think, with highly advanced applications. I promise no matter your skill level, you will find value in this video, allowing you to learn, improve, or master the lunge in Battlefront 2. Starting with some terminology, every lightsaber character has swing animations and sprint animations. If there are no other factors at play, a sprint animation will occur if your character is sprinting when you attack, and a swing animation will occur if you are stationary or moving slowly. A lunge is an intended gameplay feature that occurs when you attack whilst your reticle is on the hitbox of the subject and you are in close enough proximity. The radius of this area is about the length you travel when dodging once. In other words, if you are close enough to your opponent so you can dodge once and collide with them, then you are in range to lunge. So, the factors for a lunge to occur are, you have to attack, whilst in range, with your reticle on the subject. Keep that in mind for later as it's very important. Now that we've defined what a lunge is, let's talk about how to truly exploit it by understanding a critical concept I call queuing. The general idea of queuing is, if you are in an animation and you press an input, the animation for said input will happen once the current animation has finished. For example, if you press the input for Luke's force push whilst in a dodging animation, he's not going to push mid-dodge, so the push gets queued. Once the dodge animation has finished, the push queues through and the animation plays. This applies to pretty much every animation in the game, but you can only queue one animation at a time, and queuing a second one will override any animation that is already queued. To illustrate, if you press jump while dodging, you'll jump after the dodge, and then if you press repulse while in the air, you'll repulse once you hit the floor. And then if you press dodge while you're in repulse, you'll dodge once that animation has finished, etc, etc. Let me know if you want a detailed guide on this. Queuing is very fundamental, but it's also incredibly useful to know and it has lots of applications. So, why does this matter? Well, the key to lunging is that those three factors that we talked about earlier, pressing swing, reticle on target, and being in range, only have to be true when you press the input for the swing, not when the swing queues through. For example, here I am in range, but I dodge away from my enemy, out of range. So you'd think I wouldn't be able to swing and lunge onto my target since I'm too far away, right? Well, that's not true, because at the beginning of the dodge animation, I queued in a swing, and when I pressed that button, the swing was in range, and since I queued the swing while all three factors were met, once the swing animation queued through, as you can see, I lunge onto my opponent. In summative terms, to do an advanced lunge, you must queue an attack during a separate animation when in range and on the target. This animation is often a dodge, but it can also be abilities like Luke's rush, Maul's spin attack, or even some jumps for certain characters. Then, once this animation has finished, the swing that you queued whilst in range and with your reticle on the target will queue through, and then that animation will lock onto them and you'll close all the distance you created. Some people have requested that I say things more explicitly, so the inputs you must press to do exactly what I'm doing on screen are: hold left trigger away from your opponent, press circle to dodge, and then R2 immediately after you dodge to cue the swing. You can practice this on a vacant controller in an arcade match if you wish to build the muscle memory, but remember that there are many variations to this, so don't just get stuck dodging away from your opponent. One last thing to mention before we get into applications is that you can control whether your lunge attack is a sprint animation or a swing animation. Sprint animations tend to make contact with the enemy and deal damage, but they can also be parried. Swing animations tend to just close the distance, not usually hitting their hitbox. If you are far enough from your target when you cue the attack, but not so far that you are out of range, then the lunge attack will have a sprint animation. If you are close enough when you cue the attack, then it will be a swing animation. The reason that you'd want to control this is because the two animations are good for very different things. The sprint animation is an attack within itself, so it can be used to pressure, it allows for follow-up animation cancels, but it can also be parried, whereas the swing animation doesn't usually make contact with the target, like I said. This leaves you very close and can then be chained into a jump attack for a surprise hook swing, especially when attacking from side angles. Now that we've covered what a lunge is and why it works, let's get into how you can turn it into a powerful dueling mechanic and where you should implement it into your gameplay.
This is where the fun begins.
Firstly, you can use lunges to follow up after pushing or throwing an enemy away from you, as long as you are close enough to the player when they get hit with the knockdown. The logic is exactly the same as before. You press swing whilst in the pushing animation, locking onto your enemy and cueing the lunge. And then, once the push animation finishes, you launch after them, because the swing animation that you cued will cue through. From this point, you just have to cue the next swing animation whilst in the current one. Remember to keep your reticle on the opponent when doing this. You should be able to catch up with them before they recover from the ragdoll, allowing for some follow-up hits or a continued combo. Next, you can chain lunge attacks with a sprint animation into an animation cancel. Since this video isn't about animation cancels, I won't go into too much depth, but if you hold block whilst walking after a sprint animation and do a jump attack, the animation gets cancelled and you are left with a very fast and hard to counter attack. For the specific timing, observe the examples shown on screen, and if you would like a proper in-depth tutorial to animation cancels, I have already made one and I'm considering making another one, so if you would like an updated animation cancel for 2025, let me know in the comments. This move is great for Yoda, and it's something I will cover when I make my Yoda dueling guide, which should hopefully be out soon. Lunges can also cause staggers. A stagger is an animation that leaves you very vulnerable, and it occurs when something hits your block on an awkward angle, usually from the side, right on the boundary between blocking and getting hit. I have a specific video on this, but if your opponent dodges through you when you go for a lunge attack, there is a high chance that they get staggered and it allows you to follow up. The lunge would obviously have to be a sprint animation as you are making contact with the opponent, but this allows for a potential animation cancel follow-up. Watch this clip and observe how I used the lunge attack to stagger, and then the animation cancel with a follow-up hit to punish. Next, lunges are a great way to keep up pressure. If your enemy is on low stamina, you can use lunges to keep the distance between you small, allowing you to punish their vulnerability and deal lots of damage. Again, this is great as Yoda, given his sprint animation is really good. Lunges can also be chained into jump attacks, creating an unexpected hook swing. A hook swing is an attack where you jump around all through your opponent's block to deal damage with an airborne attack. It usually requires you to telegraph your movement by sprinting, but by chaining a lunge attack with a swing animation into a jump attack, you can make it much less predictable. Certain swing animations are better than others at this, but it generally works well when dodging from a side. Certain swing animations give momentum to a cued jump attack. The three most prominent are Dooku's second swing animation, Dooku's left dodge animation, and Obi-Wan's back dodge animation. This can be chained with a lunge to create an unexpected attack. By utilizing the swing animation lunge attack, if you turn away after cueing the swing, you will lunge to a position that allows you to break your enemy's block, often staggering them in the process. This is more effective with characters that have faster swing speeds, as you have to swing multiple times to actually deal damage. Kylo and Grievous can perform unique lunges with Frenzy and Thrust Surge respectively. When on target, you just have to swing and press the ability at the same time. You can quickly sprint before doing this to make it a sprint animation, which will hit your enemy's block. Grievous' one tends to cue Thrust Surge or a second hit afterwards and can be much less reliable, so I'd only use it to pressure a low stamina opponent. Kylo's one is more polished and can be very versatile. The range star card for both of these abilities can thus be a liable option for dueling, although Grievous does have much better alternatives. If you jump attack after an animation cancel, and cue the attack fast enough that the attack for the animation cancel theoretically wouldn't have finished if it wasn't cancelled, then the attack won't cue through at the peak of the jump and instead when you land on the ground. The timing is quite hard and the move is complex, but it can sometimes be useful to surprise enemies. Blaster heroes with the large jump can perform something similar, except they don't require you to use the animation cancel to prevent the attack from queuing through mid-air. Instead, you just stand very close to the opponent, start jumping, and then immediately press melee. The attack will cue through once you hit the ground. And that is a comprehensive guide to understanding and mastering the lunge. I'm thinking of doing the hook swing next, but if you have any other mechanics you prefer to see, let me know down below. I'll leave some gameplay on the screen that demonstrates some of the techniques I've mentioned in the video, as well as some extra advanced ones, so enjoy that. And until next time, have a great day, and I'll see you out on the Battlefront.
してくれ。